The international break is finally over, ladies and gentlemen. We're back with our championship score predictions. Let's jump into them all. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Very excited to jump in to this next round of championship fixtures, and we've just got a bit of a relentless schedule now between now and Christmas. No more international breaks for the foreseeable future, so we can just go full steam ahead with all of our championship predictions. As always, make sure to get yours in the comments down below and get yourself entered onto the prediction leaderboard. If we hit 300 likes on today's video, that would be massively appreciated as well. Speaking of the prediction league though, we have some updates to give you guys. We're going back 2 weeks now collecting all of these results and giving you these updates, but I've fallen all the way to 5th in the leaderboard, so I need to step up my game. I got a little bit complacent at the top, I think, while I had that number 1 spot. But coming in first place, we have a new leader in JMAT, coming in with 155 points. Quite a few of you guys, to be fair, have gone ahead and overtaken me now. So yeah, I've got quite the battle on my hands to reclaim that number 1 spot. In League 1, it's Tim H who is currently leading the way with 132 points. As ever, very close in League 1 at the moment. It only takes a good game week in here to fly up League 1 and get yourself entered into the main prediction league. And then for League 2, we've got quite a few familiar faces in here at the moment. It's Lex Alexis who's gone top of the League 2 leaderboard with 124 points. We've got Mohamed A who's coming in here as well. A couple of other familiar faces, Luke RP down there in 22nd at the moment. So yeah, loads to play for. Make sure to go ahead and get your score predictions in. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. And starting out with tonight's game, and it should be quite the interesting one. QPR going up against Luton. There's not all too much to separate these two sides in the table at the moment. QPR would solidify their place in the top 6 should they win this one, and Luton will go above QPR into the top 6 if they come out on top. QPR on a decent little unbeaten run at the moment, albeit that last game they had before the international break, maybe not the finest of performances, but to get a point away at Bloomfield Road, all things considered, was a decent result when they themselves probably weren't actually at their best. Luton have been a little bit spotty with their form recently. Seems to be going win-loss for them at the moment, but I do think they will cause this QPR side that has been a little bit susceptible at times with how open they play. I certainly think that Cornick and Adebayo will get a few chances in this one going forward. QPR also have a few injury concerns coming into this one. I think that Andre Gray is going to be missing for it. Lyndon Dykes and Seny Dieng, I think, are both going to have late fitness tests as well in terms of whether they'll be 100% fit. Ilyas Chair's coming back from quite a busy international duty as well. So I think there'll be goals scored in this one, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised at a 2-1 scoreline either way. And you know what, I think maybe I'm just edging towards Luton in this one. It really depends if they show up, because they have been a little bit up and down so far this season. But with a couple of those players doubtful for QPR at the moment, Luton may sense their opportunity and bite in this one. So I'll go 2-1 Luton. FIFA's going 2-0 QPR. That one could really go either way. Next up then to Bramall Lane for Saturday's early kickoff. It's Sheffield United going up against Coventry, probably the biggest under and overachievers going up against each other in this one, which should be an interesting tie. A couple of injuries and suspensions to take into consideration. I think that Olsen could be missing for Sheffield United in this game, as well as Ollie Norwood, who I think picked up 5 yellow cards, so will be missing for this one through a suspension. And Coventry will be without Ian Maxton, who picked up that red card in that dramatic win that Coventry had over Bristol City last time round. Now, the real sticking point that we've had with Sheffield United recently has been their defensive record. They look really shoddy at times and got picked off on the counter-attack against Blackburn Rovers before the international break when they put 3 past them. They're now 8 games without a clean sheet, Sheffield United, so we may see a bit of a shuffle of the pack, maybe because of some form issues, but also because of the players that are going to be missing. You know, Sander Berg we may see come back into that 11, and Coventry will probably fancy their chances. I know they've not had the finest away record so far this season, but they certainly have goals in them up against a Sheffield United defence that has been a little bit susceptible so far. I do see goals being scored in this one. I think it will be quite the entertaining game, and for a neutral, I'll go for an entertaining 2-2 draw in this one, I think. FIFA's going 1-0 Sheffield United. could swing either way, but I do think there'll be goals in that one. Next up then we head to Ashton Gate, where it's Bristol City going up against Blackburn. Now that 7-0 loss to Fulham aside, Blackburn haven't been awful on the grand scheme of things lately. They're 7th in the Championship at the moment, and it was a good win for them before the international break. Showed a bit of character to come back from behind to beat Sheffield United by 3-1. They've also been handed the boost of Ben Brereton coming back from international duty earlier than expected, because he picked up a yellow card and he was suspended for Chile's final match. They got to have him back in Blackburn, so he'll have got a full week of training under his belt, which will have been a benefit. Going up against a Bristol City side who are struggling at the moment. Obviously, Nigel Pearson back in the building now for Bristol City. I know he'd been off a little bit with illness and things like that, but tough gig that he's got on his hands at the moment. Bristol City have been conceding a lot of goals recently. In 3 of their last 4 matches, they've conceded 3 goals. The absolute capitulation we saw last time against Coventry springs to mind, and in general their game management has been pretty shoddy so far this season when they do get themselves into those leading positions, particularly at home so far this season, and how many of them have they ended up throwing away. Blackburn, I think, will be fancying their chances on the counter-attack of this game, and that's how I can maybe see it being won. I'm going to go 2-1 Blackburn for this game, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. Next up then we head to Craven Cottage. We've got Fulham going up against Barnsley. Now the big news coming out of Barnsley recently is that they have gone ahead and appointed a new manager, Poya Asbaghi, coming in. However, he won't be in charge for the game this weekend. I think he properly starts work with Barnsley on the Monday, and maybe wisely so. This was going to be a tough game for any new manager to go in, given the situation that Barnsley currently find themselves in. Fulham are a side who are playing with confidence and are scoring goals for fun, especially at home. 2.4 goals per game they've averaged at home so far this season. They've had more shots so far this season than any other team in the league. I think that most impressively out of that stat is that they have the 2nd best conversion rate in the league. Mitrovic is fresh off the back of being a national hero for Serbia in the international break as well, so I'm sure he'll be keen to carry on his impressive start to the season so far. And while Barnsley may have a bit of a bounce because of a new environment, a new manager coming in and some new ideas which will generally start to seep across to the players, I think this is a tough gig to walk into straight away. Barnsley have conceded goals for fun so far this season, and Fulham have looked ruthless. Score prediction: I'm going to go 3-0 Fulham, I think. FIFA's going 2-0 Fulham. Next up then we go to Huddersfield up against West Brom. Both sides had probably quite frustrating results before the international break. Huddersfield had that disappointing loss to Cardiff when they lost that one late on after taking the lead, and West Brom had that draw with Middlesbrough. Greg Garner did get on the score sheet though in that game, and if you watched last time's video, we mentioned that may be the sort of thing to kickstart his season. West Brom themselves have been a little bit spotty in terms of their form recently. I think it's a win-drawn loss in their last 3 matches now, and Huddersfield do have the capacity to hurt teams, especially at home. Huddersfield unbeaten now in their last 4 home matches. They do tend to get a goal or 2 in these types of matches. But for a score prediction, I think I'll just go with the firepower of West Brom in this one. I'll go 2-1 to the Baggies, with FIFA saying it'll be a 1-1 draw. Next up then we go to Hull up against Birmingham. Hull had a fantastic win before the international break, 2-0 against Barnsley in what was a bit of a relegation 6-pointer, so it's crucial that they go on and build on that performance and result in this game against the Birmingham side, who are still looking pretty depleted in terms of their injury list at the moment. I think that Bowyer was hopeful that this international break would give Birmingham an opportunity to get some of their players back to fitness, but I think they're still going to be without the likes of Colin Friend, Pedersen, Graham and Sanchez coming into this one, so still quite the sizable injury list for Birmingham, particularly in those defensive areas. Obviously in the end that's where Reading got the better of them in that game, so potentially we could see a bit of a momentum swing continue for Birmingham. They went on a really good run before the international break, had that bit of a sticky performance against Reading, probably due to all those players out injured, and with a lot of them still missing, Hull may fancy their chances for this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this one ends goalless, but I'll just edge ever so slightly to Hull with a 1-0 in this game, and FIFA's going to agree with me. Next up then we head to the Riverside, and it's Chris Wilder taking charge of his first Middlesbrough match up against Millwall, and not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously Millwall currently find themselves above Middlesbrough in the table, although they don't tend to score all too many goals on the road. They have been fairly consistent at picking up points. I think 2 wins, 4 draws and 2 losses on the road so far this season for Millwall, which is a respectable sort of record. Middlesbrough obviously parting with Neil Warnock. I think most people saw that coming for quite some time, and they were immediately with that hiring of Chris Wilder, and he has had the international break now to work with this group of players, so it'll be interesting to see how many of his ideas have already started to come across. I'm sure that the atmosphere inside the Riverside will have a bit of a bounce in this one, because it does feel like a bit of a clean slate for everyone at Middlesbrough and a fresh start for their football club this season. So for a score prediction in this one, I think I am edging towards Bury now. I think that Wilder may get a bit of a tune out of these players from the get-go. I'm going to go 2-1 Borough in this game, with FIFA going 1-0 Middlesbrough. Next up then we head to Deepdale, where we got North End going up against Cardiff. Obviously Cardiff on the other side, which we'll all be watching out for this weekend, with Steve Morrison now being confirmed as their manager. Done pretty well in the games he's took charge of so far. Started to get a bit of a transition across in terms of a stylistic change. Cardiff looking to use the ball a little bit more. I think they've had over 50% possession in 2 out of the 3 matches that he's been in charge of so far, which probably didn't happen all too often under Mick McCarthy. But Preston, we've just been a really weird side so far this season. The one player that I am hopeful is going to be back for this weekend is Patrick Bauer, particularly coming up against the aerial threat of Keitha Moore, who looked back to his best in that game before the international break against Huddersfield when he bagged a brace for Cardiff. I don't think there'll be all too much in this one. A draw wouldn't surprise me. Preston have been pretty steady at home recently, and we've not lost a home game since that opening day of the season. We don't necessarily take it to the opposition when we're at Deepdale, but we do tend to be a little bit more solid. So score prediction time, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this game, I think, and FIFA's going to agree with me. Coming up next, we then go to Reading up against Nottingham Forest. Reading, where a lot has been going on over this international break off the pitch. Obviously they've been handed that 6-point deduction, which now leaves them 19th in the Championship and 4 points off the bottom 3. They're fairly fortunate in a way that one of those relegation spots has already and probably will be occupied by Derby now, with them getting that extended point deduction. And in general, it was a reasonable start to the season, albeit we did see a little bit of a tail off in their form recently. They lost 4 on the bounce and then won that last game before the international break against Birmingham. So difficult match this weekend, I think, up against a Forest side who have looked good so far under Steve Cooper. Unbeaten on the road since Steve Cooper came in. It was a good win for Forest last time out before the international break as well, where they swept aside Preston with relative ease, to be honest with you. They've been scoring a lot more goals under Cooper recently, and I think they may just edge this one. The whole point deduction scenario might make it a bit of a weird atmosphere around Reading. You know, they may use that as a sense of motivation, like we saw at Derby at times throughout the season so far. But I've just got a feeling that Forest may sneak that one, so I'll go 2-1 Forest. FIFA's going 1-0 Reading. Next to them, we go to Stoke up against Peterborough. A bit of news from both these clubs over the international break. Obviously Stoke with the gutting news that Harry Souttar will now be missing for the entirety of the season. Picked up an injury while on international duty, and it's weird how this season's been a bit of a parallel for Stoke compared to last season, because they obviously lost Tyrese Campbell at a similar part of last season. Then from then on, their form really went ahead and derailed, and Harry Souttar, up until this point of the season, was arguably Stoke's best player, crucial to the way they played in terms of that back three and how he could spread the ball from side to side. Albeit I think they probably still come into this game against Peterborough as the favourites. Peterborough, obviously, Darren Ferguson, their manager, signing a new contract over the international break. And we have seen signs of improvement from Peterborough. They certainly have looked more competitive in recent weeks. It was a narrow defeat before the international break against a good Fulham side. Away form still needs a bit of tweaking. That win against Hull aside, Peterborough have still been pretty shoddy on the road. They're the lowest scoring team on the road so far this season, so obviously that needs rectifying. But maybe we'll see them having a bit more firepower now with Clark Harris back in the equation. Score prediction for this one, I'm going to go 2-0 Stoke, I think. FIFA's going to agree with me. Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens to Stoke in the absence of Souttar. Next up then, we head to Swansea. We're at Swansea going up against Blackpool. Blackpool will use this international break to get some of their players back in training. I know that Maxwell and Shane Lavery are both back in team training. Whether this weekend will have come too fast for them in terms of throwing them back into the matchday squad, that may still be the case, but they're certainly closer than they were previously. Swansea, interesting team at the moment. They were on a really good run of form until they got absolutely torn to shreds before the international break break against Bournemouth when they just gave up so many high quality chances to the opposition. I'm expecting Swansea to dominate the ball in this one. It'll just be a question of can they get those penetrating passes from midfield to get through this Blackpool back line, which has been pretty decent lately, to be honest. They've only conceded more than 1 goal in one of their last 5 matches, and in that game they still went on to win it against Reading. And Blackpool obviously carried that goal scoring threat as well. Thought they were fairly unlucky last time not to win against QPR before the international break, and in this one I don't think there'll be all too much in it. Blackpool have got a decent away record at the moment, don't they? So I think I'm going to go for a draw in this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1. FIFA's going 1-0 Swansea. Last of all then, on the Sunday we've got Derby going up against Bournemouth. Obviously the big news coming out of Derby over the international break was that full 21-point deduction being applied to Derby this season. A scenario which many of us thought would be the case, but we finally now at least have closure with this situation between Derby and the EFL, which has rumbled on for all too long now. It does make for quite grim reading of the league table for Derby fans, you know, 12 points off safety with a bit of an impossible mountain to climb. But to be fair to them, what we've seen from this Derby squad so far and Wayne Rooney, I certainly don't think it'll be the case of them, you know, down tooling, you know, regardless of whatever happens in January and the players that may leave. I certainly think that we'll see this Derby squad give everything between now and the end of the season. Tough game though to come back into, up against the Bournemouth side who put 4 past Swansea last time around. I do think though that at times Bournemouth have struggled against teams who do play with a low block. They can get a little bit frustrated. You know, I thought that Preston did that quite well up against Bournemouth, and it'll be up to Bournemouth really and those creative players who they got in midfield to make sure that this isn't a flat performance and make sure they can be as dynamic as possible in the final third and just look for those little pockets of space that Derby may end up leaving. Derby on the whole have been fairly good at home, albeit they've not always had the biggest goal threat, but Bournemouth have been very good on the road. They've only conceded 1 goal away from home all season, which is absolutely crazy. 7 clean sheets in a row on the road. So for this one, I think I am back in Bournemouth. I'm going to go 2-0 Bournemouth. FIFA's going for a 1-1 draw. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, make sure to go ahead and get your score predictions in the comments down below. Nice to have some Championship football back now after the international break, and thankfully we don't have another international break for quite some time. But as always guys, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Thanks for watching though guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.